such great stories, so many similarities. I mean, I hear your stories and I think, wow, man, I'm feeling so humble that I can stand there as well and just share my story with you guys. And I know for a fact that everyone has a story, everyone has a book. And, I've actually written literally some books. And, I'm here standing. And, who knows the feeling of being falsely accused? Who has ever been falsely accused of something he did not do? Who has ever been falsely accused? Please raise your hands and show me whether you know the feeling of injustice. Even though it was as a little kid, stealing a cookie from the jar, and your mom said, well, you shouldn't be doing this, and you actually did not steal the cookie this time. Normally you did, but now you did not do. Or your teacher saying that you were peeking, but you actually studied so well for this test. Everyone knows the feeling of injustice. I know for a fact. I never encountered someone telling me, I don't know what injustice is. No, everyone knows. And I must say, at 24 years old, I endured something in my life as well. At 15, 16 years old, I remember that as the day of yesterday. I was with my friends sitting on a couch at one of my friends' houses, and we were watching a movie. And we had popcorn, we had Coca-Cola, we had everything, and we were drinking, and we would watch movies about people being in prison. Actually, some movies, and they were actually innocent, and we all drew the same conclusion. We all said, wow, I think that's the worst that can happen in your life, being put behind bars while not doing anything. Well, not knowing, a few years later, the same thing happened to me. Not knowing, because I just had a normal, average life, had my friends, I was born and raised in the Netherlands, and I had a beautiful youth. So many people cannot say the same thing, that I had a great youth. Well, I had. I studied. I was one of the youngest IT engineers when I was 20 years old. And, I started my own company. Everything went uphill for me until that one day. And everyone has a day in their life you can recall as if the day of yesterday. And for me, it was the 23rd of December 2004 that my luxury, comfortable life took a turn for the worse. And I described my story in my first book, The 400 Letters from My Mother. And I must say, there was also a TEDx speech about my first story, and I'm invited here to be sharing my story, my second story. And it's actually the first time, so it's a little, I'm feeling a little tensed, because how I described my feelings and emotions and experiences over there, how I spent from my 24th until my 29th behind bars in 4 different prisons in Morocco. And people always ask, wow, Morocco, but what does a prison look like in Morocco? Well, you just go to Google. Google is your best friend. You type in prison space Morocco, and you'll see for yourself. It wasn't no holiday. Yeah. And I describe how I actually in 4 different prisons, how I created my own world. Because I didn't let the environment create my luck. Determine my luck. I created it myself. I built up every time again my own world. How I worked in a prison shop, how I studied their language, Arabic, because I didn't know any word Arabic. You know what? I'm going to learn it. I taught English class to my fellow inmates. I had to work as a translator for the warden. And it became my world. I even had my own prison cat. It was my world. And you know what? I came home. 29 years old. I turned 29. I was set here by a law that tells you can finish your sentence here in your home country, here in the Netherlands. So I was set free with apologies, with no criminal record, and I was brought home. 29 years old, I turned. And the world was at my feet. I came home in a warm nest because luckily I have such a great mom. Not everyone can say the same thing, but I have such a great mom. In a warm nest. And my dad, he was waiting for me as well. And my little brothers, even though they were grown, I said, whoa, you're big. My friends, my family, I came home in a warm nest. But the outside world wasn't waiting for me. But the first months I didn't care. Because those were the best months maybe of my life. In the euphoria, I experienced everything. My friends, they took me out for dinner. So I ate pizza, French fries. I mean, everything I could eat. Chinese, not the people, but the food. I ate. And I must say that same night I turned sick. I was so ill. Because my stomach, it wasn't used to that food anymore. So at night I was like, what's this? So I ran down. And I also liked puking that day because I threw up, everything I shoved inside, I threw up, but with a smile from ear to ear. It was the feeling of freedom again. My friends, they were talking about YouTube. Have you seen the movie clip on YouTube? Have you seen that tweet on Twitter and Facebook, the post on Facebook and Google Earth, you know? I was like, whoa, time out, you guys. What are you guys talking about? I mean, and they said, well, we're talking about YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, you know, those things which were so normal to people, they didn't exist back in 2004. So they enlightened me. And I must say, new areas, new buildings, new roads, new car models. I mean, everything changed. And it really made a big impression on me. I must acknowledge, it made an impression on me. But you know, I came home, and after those few months of euphoria, it wasn't new anymore that I was home again. And I was there at my mom's place, in her little house, because she also endured a lot of things during my incarceration. She had to move to a different house, a small house, and there I had my own little room with a bed, with a mirror, and a closet. And everything was stripped away from me, 29 years old. And I sat there in my room. And I must say, sometimes I shed a tear. Because why did this happen to me? And, you know, I saw my friends, they lived on, they had their own place, they had kids. I mean, one of my friends, he came down the stairs, he had a kid of 2 years old here and a kid of 4. I said, whoa, are you babysitting? No, those are my kids. Whoa, I didn't know. So many things have changed. And everything was stripped away from me. But you know what even made a bigger impression on me? Maybe the things that didn't change. I had my PC. That's also one of the things I still had. My PC. At that time, my computer was super fast. Windows XP, you know, I booted it, and it started up 5 minutes later. Bam! There was my desktop. Yeah. Well, it was fast at that time, you know, and the same image in the background. The same icons. Never been touched. As if they were laughing at me. And you know, that's when it struck me. Actually, time stood still for me. Wow. Actually, time stood still for me, and now what I'm going to do? And you know, I had just one idea. I'm going to bring out my story to the world, because those 400 letters from my mother, I have to share them. I have to share it. I don't have to keep it for myself, no, maybe, but you know, the outside world wasn't waiting for me. And it actually struck me sometimes so deeply that I even missed the world over there. Because we live in a beautiful world, but also in a pretty harsh world. And you know, at times, I shed a couple of tears. I was looking at myself in the mirror. I was shedding tears, actually grasping to things I brought back from that world. And I grabbed to things like this, the drawings Zhao had made for me. He was with me in my cell, and he thanked me so much for helping him there, because he attended my English class. I gave my students English class every time, every week. And he actually drew those pictures when he got home. He got 6 months. He was also falsely incarcerated because so many people were over there. And you know, he wrote a message to me in English. He never did. He never could. And he said, "Dear Joe, good wishes to you and all your family. You are the best." And then it got a little hard for him, so he went on in French, which I understand perfectly. But you know, these things I grasped to. Like this, you know, it was a little present for my mom I made in prison. And the guys I knew best in my department, in that third prison, I asked them, "Could you please write my mom just a message, because she's coming to visit me, and I want to give her something." These things, you know, how could it be, again, sitting in my room, that I missed such a world, such a devious, black, dangerous world? How could I miss such a thing? But you know, we also shared beautiful moments over there. We also had moments in which we could laugh. And I always say to people, you know what? You are unique as a person. You know that? You are unique as a person, luckily. But you're not unique with your problems. At least one person around the globe has the same problem you are encountering now. And I always say, it's like a tip I want to give. If you are in some kind of situation, look at someone else who also endured the same thing and how he got out as a winner. To me, it was pretty obvious, because so many countless of people were innocent behind bars. But you know, this book, Nelson Mandela, the first name that popped up in my mind, he's been falsely incarcerated and for a long period of time. You know, this book, this actual book, I stole from prison. What am I going to do? You know, because this book means so much to me. And if you really look closely to it, you see these brown stains. Who can tell what those brown stains are? What do you think? Cola? Blood? Whoa. No, it's not blood. Yeah, coffee. No, it's not coffee. We didn't have any coffee over there. Come on, what do you think? Was it a 5-star hotel? My fingers? Other fingers? I have clean hands. Come on. Now I'm going to tell you, because it's pretty hard to guess, because you can't imagine the world I lived in. I think these are cockroach feces. Imagine how full it was with cockroaches and rats. It was really a filthy world. But this book, I opened up, and the first thing I read, just a random page, was Nelson Mandela telling me, as he told me, one of the properties of a good person in life is that he or she minds the little things of life. And I read it, and the first thing I thought, wow, he's talking about my mom. How she told me in her letters about those little things in life, even in prison. She told me, take a look at the whiskers of your cat. The whiskers, take a look at the hairs on her nose. How beautiful it's all put together. Take a look at the feathers of the birds who are hopping on the courtyard of the prison. I took a glance every time I had the chance. The sky, the ever-changing sky, the beautiful colors, even when the sun was setting behind the walls, 50 foot high, with barbed wires, I didn't care, because I saw in my mind the sun setting in the horizon. That's what I still could do, because they imprisoned my body, but here they left me alone, my mind. And you know what? I must say, again, back in my room, sitting there, how can I be sobbing? How can I be standing here? Because, you know what? I told myself nobody's waiting for you. But nobody's waiting for you too. Or you, or you, or you. I tell this to everyone. I tell this to inmates in prisons nowadays, because I get to share my story every time. I tell this to the biggest people, the biggest CEOs of the biggest companies around the globe. I tell this to students, Imagine students, 4th grade, they have their diploma, and they're cheering and shouting, they're in party mood, and I get to share my story, and I'm standing over there, and I say, whoa, we got our diplomas. I say, oh, good for you. Huh? Yeah, that's good. You really worked hard for it, right? Yes, that's good, because nobody's waiting for you. Yeah. And I said, with a wry face, I said, but you have to understand how the outside world looks at you. Don't see it as a problem, see it as a fact. And if you know how it works, just stand above it, and don't see it as a problem. I was sitting in my room, look at myself in the mirror. How can I be sobbing over here? Because I have my health. I have my health. So many people now, as we speak, are in prison. Well, prison is almost like the same thing, hospital or prison. But they are fighting for their health. One of my best friends, Peter, I just ate with him this morning. How are you, Peter? Well, it's not going really well, because he's fighting a really bad form of muscle disease. And he told me, you know what? I would give up everything, my bank savings, my accounts, my car, my house, everything, just to take a walk again on the beach, just to take a stroll in the woods. Something I can do, I could do at that time, I still can do. I can get up, I can see, I can smell, I can hear, I can walk. And, I have the love. Health, but also the love. Not the untouchable love I had at that time, through those letters. I had the untouchable love, but I had the touchable love again. I could give my mom a hug, because luckily I still have this mom. Luckily I have this mom, and luckily I am in her house, and I could give her a cuddle. I always say after presentation to people, you know what you're going to do when you get home? You know what you're going to do? If you have a home, I really hope so, because that's already something special. Don't take it for granted. And I really hope that you have someone waiting for you who's loving you back. It makes it easy in the process, because you have to hug him or her. Yeah, it's a little awkward, but hug him or her. Why? Because you can, because I miss this hug. Every time I get by my mom's house, I always stop and give her a hug, because I can. And I had the freedom. I could go. Nobody's holding me in my room. The only one holding himself in his room was me, myself, and I. So I got out. And you know what happens when you present yourself to the world, when you dare to share? A lot of doors will be slammed into your face, because nobody's waiting for you. But just focus on that one door. Just focus on that one door, please. It's not easy, but life ain't easy. I never met someone 90 years old coming up to me and saying, well, Joseph, beautiful story, because me, from the day I was born, everything went uphill. I never endured some kind of setback or misfortune or whatsoever. It's not going to happen. You all endure sometimes a situation you didn't ask for, but how you handle it, that's some kind of attitude you can have. an attitude of a winner. And they'll come up to me telling, well, this person, well, he doesn't have it in him, or he doesn't have it in her. Well, that's a lot of nonsense, because everyone can have a certain attitude of a winner. That's a choice you do have. And yes, I presented myself to the world. Look, here I am, Joseph Oubelkas. And it wasn't easy, because who's going to believe a man innocent in prison? They hear about my background, that my father's from Morocco. Morocco, you know. And you know, it really got to me time by time, you know, but I don't care. I'm just going to collect the people, gather the people around me who do want to do something with my story. Because people don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe me. You just have to do it for yourself. Do something with these stories you hear every day. Do it for yourself in your own surroundings, because it's the only thing you have the influence on. And I presented myself. My first time was 5 years ago that I got to share my story. I was invited by the mom of one of my best friends, and she worked at a convent. And you know, there was my first fan club at 80+ nuns. And it was awesome. I mean, I just got to share my story, and I was there, just like I'm telling you right now, because I can't do it in another way. And they were so nice to me, and and from that day on, little by little, step by step, I got to speak to little organizations and companies, and it got bigger and bigger. Nowadays, wow, when I close my eyes every week, almost on a daily basis, I just close my eyes and I take a deep breath, because I'm thinking about the time over there, dreaming or visualizing, wow, how will it be when I'll be getting home again? And it's not going to be easy. You know, I don't want it to be easy. You know, you have to do it yourself. So my mom said, focus, take responsibility, determine your goals and reach them, because if you really want to, you will succeed. If you don't want to succeed, you're not going to succeed, but if you want to, you will. But you have to do it yourself. And nowadays, I get to share my story so many times on a weekly basis around the world. And I'm so happy because I can be just myself. And you know what? I actually appeared in so many TV shows and radio shows, and I get to share my story in magazines. And you know, this was one of my biggest victories was Men's Health magazine. It's my favorite magazine. And I told my friends, because we were doing sports over there, you know, just with our body weight. And I said, well, maybe one day I'll be in Men's Health magazine. And my friends, my fellow women, said, you with your dreams? Well, it's always possible. So a couple of years later, I got my own 6 pages in Men's Health magazine. How we did everything over there, you know. Actually, as we speak, let it drop. As we speak, I'm in one of the most popular magazines, Linda. I don't know if you know Linda. Well, people know Linda. And actually, I'm now in something what's called Leuke Man. Nice guy. How nice is that? And my girlfriend, she said, well, actually, finally they found out that you're a Leuke Man. And you know what? These are all cherries on the pie of life. This doesn't determine my luck. This doesn't determine my luck, because I always created myself. And you know what? The dream that I'm living right now has become a little more beautiful than I could have imagined back over there. But it was possible. But you have to do it yourself. But you know what? It's the most beautiful thing you can do, doing it yourself. So thank you very much that I could share my story with you guys. Thank you. Thanks.